If we don't look at our past, then we miss out a huge amount. And we're so busy in the present, and we're so busy planning, but if we don't stop and reflect, and if we don't do that, then we are missing out on what centuries of humanity have had behind us. And who are we?
Welcome back to the Education Vanguard podcast. I'm Justin Hardman. This is a special one. We're doing a conference takeover, bringing you the keynotes and some of the panels from our recent 17th annual 21st Century Learning Conference. This keynote was delivered by Helen Wright, and if you've been listening to the podcast for a while, you may remember that Helen and I sat down for a conversation along with Howard Strabel not too long ago. She's someone whose thinking I always find genuinely stimulating. We were happy to have her involved in a number of ways at the conference this past weekend. Listening back to this keynote, one idea in particular stayed with me. The call to look honestly within ourselves, to understand who we are and where we're coming from before we can lead with any real conviction. And that's whether you're leading a school or leading in a classroom. And connected to that, Helen's challenge to all of us to have what she calls moral courage in our innovations. Not just trying new things for the sake of it, but being grounded in a deep sense of purpose about what it is that education is actually for. I think you'll find a lot to reflect on here. So without further ado, here's Helen Wright's opening keynote from the 17th Annual 21st Century Learning Conference.
Thank you. And it is a pleasure to be here very much today. And we're going to go on a little journey today, this morning. But in actual fact, I just want to say a couple of words about conferences. Because with conferences, sometimes we think we're here to learn from the person who's speaking. In actual fact, I don't think that's true. I think we're here to learn from the people around us, and we're also here to learn from ourselves. What the purpose is of people coming out and talking and saying a few words is simply to prompt your thinking. So every single person here will take away something slightly different from what I say and what other people say. That said, of course, I do love some things I want you to know. Yes, yeah. And what we're going to do in this session that we've got this morning, this period of time, which you're going to be actively thinking in and reflecting in, going to do is to seek to look at education, schools, classrooms, teachers, students, learning going forward, but by taking a step into the past. Because if we don't look at our past, then we miss out a huge amount. And we're so busy in the present, and we're so busy planning, but if we don't stop and reflect, and if we don't do that, then we are missing out on what centuries of humanity have had behind us. And who are we to say that that is the right thing to do, that we know best? Who are we to be able to go, oh, do you know what? We know exactly what we're doing. Who are we to say that? So what we're going to do in this next half hour is have a little journey back into the past, a little think about what has happened in education, not a huge amount, but a little bit. And all the time you're going to be thinking about how does this apply to us moving forward? And I've got some action points for you to consider taking away today. In fact, not just consider, you're going to. So, okay. Right. So this is me. And one of the things that I have had the privilege of doing over the past 10 years since I stopped running schools and moved into being able to support people who are running schools and leading schools is that one of the things that the privilege do is to speak. I want to speak at places, and sometimes people say, what is it you speak about? What's the subject you speak about? And for years I thought, oh my goodness, maybe I should have one thing that I always speak about. In actual fact, I realized that there is a process that I have which is the same. Whatever it is I'm speaking about, it's about the frontiers of thought. It's about where we are in terms of our thinking now, but also where we could be, what's just out there. And because I have the privilege of connecting with so many people all over the world, there are thoughts which come together. And that's always what I want to share with people. We are each of us unique leaders. Every teacher or leader. Please don't think you're not a leader. If you feel that you're a teacher, not a leader, please don't. Everyone is a leader. We are all unique. We've all our unique perspectives, and we need to share those. And that is with humility what I'm doing now. Not because I think I know everything, but I do have some things I want you to know. Not that. It's that we're here to try and push those frontiers. We are creating knowledge and creating thinking. If we could see our thoughts now, they would be moving up and combining with other people's thoughts. It will be a very visual set of neurons outside us. That's what we're trying to achieve, and that's what I really feel called to do, and it's a real honor to be able to do that. I would pay particular attention to my role as a board member at the Dalton School of Hong Kong, DSHK, because as Howard said, I've been involved in that for 10 years. And a lot of what I'm talking about today applies directly to that school. I think it applies to all education, and it's what we're seeking to do in education, again, pushing those boundaries. And I'll talk a little bit about jobs. And some of you, I think, went to see it yesterday as well. Brilliant. And I hope you very much enjoyed it. So let's start on our journey. And the first thing we need to remember is that change isn't actually new. We often use that word unprecedented, don't we? We live in unprecedented times. We live in turbulent times. I mean, we do live in turbulent times, and you never quite know what you're going to read in the newspaper when you get up in the morning and think, oh, was it vacation today? No. Yes, sir. You never quite know that. But the past reminds us, and the philosophers remind us, that change has always been there. I think change is part of the human condition. It's about us striving at pioneering, pushing forward, stretching those boundaries. And the wise philosophers from East and West remind us that to do that, we do need to look back to our past. So we can be arrogant in thinking that our present and our future depend on us. We actually stand on the shoulders of many, many other people, and we ignore them at our peril. Anyone who's a historian in this room at the moment will be sitting there and you'll just be nodding. Yeah, go absolutely right. If they just listen to historians, everything would be okay. But sadly, many people don't. But we're going on a little journey in that respect. So the first question is, if we're going to try and build the future and we're going to draw the lessons of the past, which past is it that we're looking at? And people are very good at using certain periods of time and say, that is the past that we must look at. That was the golden age. That's what we need to be thinking about. We're good at appropriating the past. And to be fair, that's exactly what I'm doing today as well, when I talk about the early 20th century. But we need to reflect on which past, why that past, what was going on in that past, and what we can learn from it. We can learn from everything in the past, in history, and in educational theory. We can learn from everything. What's important is that we're bringing together these strands and we're carving out a future that draws in a reflective, thoughtful way about this past. Where we stumble is when we don't consider that. And sometimes it can be a bit of a surprise when we look back in the past. And indeed, the surprise comes when we look back at this swirl that there is in the early 20th century. Now, we all know the story. We know the story that over the world, mass education was put in place to serve industrial age. And this was revolution at the time, to the late 19th century. A revolution because every child was going to have education. It doesn't happen everywhere in the world. And talking a lot about what happened in the Western Hemisphere, but equally the great thinkers in China, the time are focused on seeking to have education for all children. So there was a huge amount of work that was done there at that period of time, the late 19th century. And then moving into the early 20th century, people realized that in actual fact, we're already starting to move out of the industrial age. And the kind of mass education where everybody has been prepared in a certain way was not going to serve everyone. It couldn't actually serve society in the way that some of the great pioneers in education in the late 19th century have sought. This is where, at this point, in the early 20th century, we start to get some of the great thinkers about student-centered, person-centered learning. And I'm talking about people like John Dewey. And I remember being in a conference in Shanghai in 2016, I think it was. I was in a conference there, and it was one of the early conferences, an organization which was bringing together Southeastern, Western teachers, Chinese teachers. We sat down to have an open conversation. And the first thing that one of this Chinese, in fact, more than one of the Chinese teachers asked was, tell us about John Dewey. And John Dewey, which you'll remember John Dewey in some bit in the past from your learning, and you'll say, oh, yes, I remember that. This is some of what you are basically doing. It's going back and looking and reading and seeing what he said. And it's not just him. He worked with his daughter as well. But what he was looking at was the reimagining of learning. We all know the phrase, in fact, as so much to us as well. Yeah, education isn't preparation for life. Education and schools, etc., are life itself. It's that we're not, in an industrialized model, you are preparing children to move into a society where they have a role. But that denies this whole part of their life, this formative part of their life, which is their life. And education needs to ensure that they're able to live that, explore that, do what children are uniquely able to do because their brains are different from adult brains. Now, this work was going on in the early 20th century, and it spawned a huge amount of really exciting thought at that point. Really exciting thought. That's where all the work for Maria Montessori came from, that whole the era of time. And the Montessori schools live on and indeed won awards last night. So there's this amazing period of time where people are starting to look at children as human beings. They're starting to think about education as being a part of life, not just a preparation for life. And they're actually thinking about the importance of education for democracy, to develop good thinkers, good people, that kind of moral approach to education. Now, we all say that, we do say that, and I know that strand lives in each person here, because I know that you go to school in the morning to try and help create human beings. But various things distract us, and various things have distracted people over the ages. One of the people who I want to draw your attention to, we'll talk about it a little bit later, is Helen Wright. Now, Helen Wright created the Dalton Plan, and she called it Dalton Plan because she lived in Dalton, Massachusetts. It's why it's called the Dalton Plan. And that was very much about how do you create this space for children to learn and grow, stretch their boundaries, create opportunities themselves as well as from others. When you read that, when you read what John Dewey was writing, what Evelyn Dewey noticed when she was going around various classes, when you read that, you think, my goodness, it was 100 years ago. And you look at what they were doing in their classes at that time. And that's why later on in this talk, I'll give you some reading that you must do. But the things got in the way. Things got in the way. And what got in the way? What happened? Systems. happened. Now, systems are good in many ways. Structures are good, they're useful. You may have noticed over the past few decades that we have become an increasingly structured, systematized, bureaucratized, automatized society. And we do that out of fear. Sometimes that something's gone wrong, we need to put more systems in place. You stop it. Right. We're going to put this handbook together and we've got to follow that. Oh, it's not in the handbook. I don't know what to do now. It's not in the handbook. Is that computer says no, can't do that. He's like, oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. What is that? Now, this is exactly what's happened to education. And we look at it, and I can tell from your reaction, you know this, you see it, but we get caught in this loop. We're caught in this loop because you then will go through this bit of your brain at the moment goes, if we didn't have that system, that might go wrong, and this might happen, and then actually they will get sued. And then somebody else we can't do it. We need more systems, But the trouble is that although the systems that we have in place are there for really good reasons, there are severe unintended consequences. Now, how do we manage this? How do we bring together the issue that there is when you have a system which is there for the right reason, but it has the unintended consequence of becoming like a hamster wheel? National curricula over the world are intended really for equality of access, to make sure that all children have a similar experience, regardless of where they've come from. That's why they're there. And then people say, well, we want to give them more. We want to make sure they're well prepared. So let's put something else in, and we'll put something else in, and they must do this, they must do this. And suddenly the house to kill goes round and round, and you know what happens when wheels go round and round and round. At some point, woo, something flies off. Yes. And that's what we've got to be really careful of. So how are we going to manage it? These consequences that there are severe. And the key issue that we have is a lack of time for genuine reflection. Everyone here in this room will have experienced the excitement of AI and thinking, I could just ask AI to do that something. And true, AI does come up with those policies and so on. But the danger is that we're outsourcing our thinking to AI. We're outsourcing our reflection, because what you have in each of your brains there is unique and it is special. And we have to keep sharpening our brains. We have to have the energy that goes into our brains. We have to feed our brains. Thinking should be an exercise, and on so many, you use so many calories from your thinking that we've got to do as much thinking in a day as we do cardio. We need to have that thinking and that reflection time, not just the search for the ready-made answer, the search for the solution, the search for the policy, getting those things just in place. Oh, we got it, good, okay, fine, I can do that now. No, thinking about the unique children we have in front of us, thinking about the unique staff we have, thinking about the greater vision, all of that is crucial for us to be able to evolve in education. And that's what was happening back in the early years of the 20th century. It was there. If you want a little bit of an injection of that, you're going to read books again. You're going to look at them and you're going to go, wow. So they were doing that then. Why aren't we doing that now? And you're going to start, as a result of today, to stretch your muscles that bit further about what it is you can do when you go back to school. And I know it's not easy, and we'll talk about some of the practicalities of that too. So if I were to give you some key takeaways for today, we're not at the end, by the way, I'm just leaving the takeaways now, so you can think about them. Yeah. But if I were to give you some, I would be thinking about courage. Really having courage. And that's exciting. To have courage is really exciting. Because you know what? We've all got it. We are all brave. We've all got that inner child inside us. Says, well, why not? Can we do that? Let's try. Let's do this. Let's make this happen. Even if it's on my own little way and I do, all right, here we go. Look at this. Look what this is. Look at courage. But there are different bits to that I thought were useful when we think about courage and how we can separate that out. I think having the courage to remember, the courage to rebalance, and the courage to reimagine. Okay, so let's look at each of those in turn, bearing in mind you're already starting to feel a bit courageous this morning. So I put this in a format that I thought you could actually just take a picture of, and so it'll help you think later. But I think in remembering, we need the courage to remember the great thinkers. We need to go back to John Dewey. We need to go back to Marie Montessori. We need to go back to Helen Wright. We need to go back to these people, and we need to take time to really reflect. And be careful as you say that, because there'll be a bit of your by saying, all right, okay, so we've got professional learning communities and we've got book groups. And so what we could do is put that into one of those. And then we do have that one chapter a week for the next few weeks. And then we can do that. And then we'll be fine. Be careful. Be careful. We are so ingrained in this sense of let's come up with a quick solution to something. I reckon, and I really do reckon this, of having been through this process myself, I reckon that every teacher who leaves school, comes to the end of their time in school, needs to go into rehab. You need to go into rehab because every time you go somewhere, you will find a system for it. You'll find yourself in the airport when there's a change of gate going, right, everybody, this way, it's change of gate, we're over there. And just counting you, making sure you're all there. We'll find it, was it, right, okay, so I stopped working now, so, right, I must have my timetable for the dinner I need. Do I go to see? What am I going to do? Rehab is needed. But rehab, be kind to yourselves. There are lots of stages of rehab. And this is one of them. The first thing is recognizing it, recognizing the need for it. So this courage to remember going back and thinking, reading, and going, wow. And remember this power of reflection. We say this all the time to our children. Think carefully, what you're thinking about, let's think it through, let's do this. Oh, that's almost good. Yeah, it's like, no, the power of reflection. You get a bit twitchy if you sit and just think, well, I'm not doing it. I'm not doing enough. I should be doing something. Yeah, yes, that's important. Wait. So remember this power of reflection and rediscovery. And do you know what? Remember the why. The why. We have the vision of the school. We have everything around us. We have our values on the walls. And we do have an internal why. You know, it does make us feel happy usually in the mornings. It does make us feel happy. We do feel as though we're doing something that's worthwhile. But actually stop, please think about the why. But sometimes I've been told, and people say, you know, what do you want to do? I say, I want to make the world a better place. I know you can't say that. Yes, I can. That's a why. It's a why. I think about the work that I do, if I do recruitment or coaching of leaders. And for me, being able to help get the right person in the right place, the right time is amazing. It's amazing talent. It has an impact on children. It has an impact on society. It has an impact on the world. It's one piece. It's like, why are we doing this? Why? I was so quick to dismiss those things. It is important in schools, in any organization, that we discuss those whys and that we are aligned with those whys. And some of the best research that has come out into really good education, really forward-thinking education now, shows that those schools are really aligned. They're able to articulate it, believe it, and if you're not, you shouldn't be there. You should be in a different school. You should be somewhere else. We can't just twist organizations exactly around ourselves. We can have input into them, but the organization needs to be clear. And often we make assumptions. Assumptions are the enemy. That's a whole other talk I can give about that, certainly. So we're remembering the why and we're remembering our purpose as schools. And that's human growth, that's human development. And it's not just about performance metrics. Metrics, people, that's all part of the system. And I'm not saying that those don't have their face. We have brought them in for good reasons. But when they start driving us rather than us them, there is a challenge. I'm not suggesting that you race out of here with your mouse back to school and say, we're abandoning all standardized testing. That would be career limiting, I would suggest, in that way. But let's start having these conversations. Where can we really genuinely push the boundary? What are we actually going to do about it? And this is where, I must admit, I did say this last time, so that knowing yourselves is a real starting point. If you can't honestly talk about where you're coming from and why you are where you are, you can't articulate that clearly, then it's like a reed in the wind. You're not going to be rooted. You're not going to be able to have those really strong conversations at school and with others. Sometimes that's quite scary, because sometimes when we really delve down, we realize that maybe we're not in the right place. And that can be quite challenging, because if you think, I'm not here, and then we've got to make a decision, and we have to be very pragmatic about that. Are we going to enter wholeheartedly into what's needed at that place, or are we going to make an accommodation, or are we going to be somewhere else? That's just a little thought there about honesty with ourselves, because only you can decide what it is that you do. You will be in organizations which have a direction, and if you're part of that, being part of that is going to be very important. But the courage to remember that what is possible has been possible and has been demonstrated, that is really important. So that's the first courage. The second courage is this courage to rebalance. Now, that's this thing about not rushing back and saying, we'll just check everything now, but thinking about how in school, in you, but in school as well, you can rebalance between this timelessness of these strong principles around education, but also modern systems. Bearing in mind that sometimes these systems, we created them and we fed them. Why do parents say all the time, my child must get a really good grade? It's because for years and years, we said that too. What is it that appears on your school websites? What do you value and show that you value? How much are you using it? Well, because universities need this, universities are fed into this as well. Not the really top universities in the world. Not the real, when I say top, I don't mean according to grades. I don't mean that. I mean the real places of learning across the world. No, they haven't bought into this entirely, but they use it because it's convenient in terms of grades. But we fed a lot of this. We'll stand up in front of parents and say, look at our amazing grades. Look at these. Forgetting that, in fact, when you have a grade system, then it's designed for, here's a challenging thought, it's designed for failure, because we will not allow every child to get an A. If every child's getting an A, there's something wrong with the exam, must set the exam harder. Yeah, that's no good. So systems in here, hang on, we're not talking about this so much, but there's a rebalancing is not about being wishy-washy and saying, oh, a child just needs to be back in here, it's all fine. It's not that. A child needs space to grow and be stretched and challenged and experience discomfort and become the very best of themselves. And there's a real interplay that we have there. Absolutely. We're not just saying children should be allowed to do everything because they're not adults, they're part of the society, they can grow. But we must be careful about the effect and the impact of the fact. So rebalancing is really important. Rebalancing autonomy, the autonomy of the child, the autonomy of the teacher, and the structure as well. Where do we get that going on? I heard a terrible story recently about a school, I will not name it, I'm not saying where it is. Well, it was in the UK, actually, I will tell you that. But in a sense, totally, it gave me great fear because I understood why they were doing this. It was a school that had children in here who had come from very dysregulated backgrounds. And so being able to have certain disciplines and certain ways of drawing them together makes sense to some degree. But if at every transition period, you have a time when every teacher must go to the door of their room and intone as the children and the students, the young people, walk along the corridors, proceed with pace and purpose. Proceed with pace and purpose. If that is happening, then we're thinking, oh my goodness, what are we actually doing? Is that what's right for those children? That have we lost something? Have we lost something in that? And what can we learn again from the greats? So rebalancing. We can't answer this now. I cannot give you the answer now. But what I can tell you is that the answer will come from your thinking, your reflection. And also we need to think about classrooms. And although it sounds terribly grand to describe them as ecosystems of shared responsibility, it's like, oh, go back and I could say that. Go to in our classroom, an ecosystem, shared responsibility is going to be lovely. And you could do that. But we need to think of what does that mean? If we are honouring children for the unique people they are, we're honouring teachers for the unique people we are. We do have an organisation which is a unique organisation with a collection of other animals. This is really complicated. This is an ecosystem. It's not straightforward. We cannot simplify this as easily as we think we can with systems. And I know there's a balance to be had in there. If you think too much about it, you might need to go and lie down in a darkened room during the hour. But start thinking about the process. Have the courage to do that. And then, of course, the courage to reimagine. Reimagine what it would be like if we were moving beyond just an imitation of what we've been doing. Actually, we were building real thought, real contemporary expressions of truth, eternal truths, work that's been done in the past and has lasted through the years, but that has been suppressed and squashed by so much. Suppose we could reimagine leadership, or we could reimagine it as much more flexible, much more adaptive, much more focused about human beings, but being really careful, because if we try and mold people in just our image, we don't know ourselves well enough. We don't know that it's not just us, but we are part of the collective, and the collective is actually greater humanity, and we need the humility to understand that. If we just try and say, we'll do it because I think it's right, and we haven't reflected on all of that, we're not serving our children well, we're not serving society or humanity, the world well in any way whatsoever. But we do need to think, we do need to keep reimagining, how can schools actually make this happen? And can we imagine that ripple effect? When we're helping children understand themselves, when we're helping teachers understand themselves, then think about the agency that we're cultivating, think about the empathy, think about that resilience, think about everything that we're doing, because we're helping individuals to know about themselves and about the role, the moral role that they have to play in the world. So we're trying to do this at DSHK. Absolutely we're trying. And it is jolly hard. It is really hard. You'll see all sorts of people's websites. Oh, do project-based learning, student-centered learning, global citizens. We create global citizens. Have you ever seen a school website that says, troll the pocket bitch here? But you come and us anyway. Yeah. You never see that. And we fall into that trap as educators. We lead this schizophrenic existence, which is, On the outside, it's phenomenal, it's wonderful. The inside, oh, haven't done this today. Oh, no, you've not done risk assessment. So we, that's another reason to go to recap, I will say, that we are really, really trying to create that space. And that is by challenging people, bringing the right people in, but constantly talking about this. And we fall short. In many ways, we fall short. If we can recognize that we fall short, and then we keep saying, right, okay, how do we pick ourselves up again? How do we make this happen? How do we work together? We can see in the children already, the school is growing up year by year, very carefully growing up year by year, building on foundations. We can see in the children already that they are so much more well-balanced, well-grounded. They're so much more self-aware than when you might compare to them in other schools, or the masses of brilliant schools. But you can see that happening. It's jolly tough. It really is hard. And that's one message I would like to say to you. That doesn't stop our courage. That doesn't stop us. We know that those children, will absolutely ensure that each of those children is able to go on and be a wonderful, well-balanced, well-grounded human being. And that's what we're really aiming to. And that means we have to adapt things. And that's the advantage of growing year by year. So I will say that's one of the amazing things that the founders did when they set this up, and to enable us to do that financially year by year. And it's why it's such a privilege to be on the board of the school. So what is it that I would like you to take away? Those bits about courage, obviously, but thoughts. What is education actually for? What kind of people are we developing? And how can we demonstrate moral courage in our innovation? And if that was a kind of a handout for you to take back, to devote time to, I would say that's the slide that you need. That's the one to take away. Because if we can slow down, if we can reflect, if we can really trust the learner, that is going to make a difference. I don't need trust the learner. Children do not know everything. They can't. We don't know everything. It's not about saying, off you go. It's about saying, who are you? Who are you as an individual? And how can we help you learn who you are? And what is our role in doing that as we find out more about ourselves? So your call to action, apart from that last slide, is to go and do some reading. These are the things that I'd like you to read. And I obviously have all your contact details. And I'm going to make sure that you do this by... a few things here. Do have a look at Schools of Tomorrow. You can get that for your online, by the way. I mean, Project Gutenberg, or certainly you can get that for your online. Ditto, the Education on the Dalton Lab. Just look, think about it, take a try. You don't have to read every word in order to have a reflection. You can take a sentence, you can take but what I would really encourage you to look at are the case studies, the stories of the descriptions of classrooms. Do sign up to, I'm a great fan of High Tech High and their Graduate School of Education, and they have a lovely series called Unboxed, sometimes a little bit polished, but it don't have the answers, but they do have thoughts for reflection. And I would really encourage that you to read this book. This book is such a deeper learning, really interesting, and it's relevant because it's fairly new. It's 2019 that it was published. Harvard academics going out to look at all these schools which were saying they were doing phenomenal and amazing progressive stuff, discovering that wasn't the case, but they would find deeper learning in pockets, and that's what they brought together and for this book. And that's actually, again, it gives us courage because we know we're not alone in all of that. That's what we're really looking for. So please do keep in touch. I look forward to hearing how your work goes. And I hope that I've given you some food for thought, some courage, some ability to go forward. And together, you know that we can do this. So go for it. Go.